The all-hands meeting was on a Wednesday morning. 300 people on the call. The CEO presenting. Slides up on the shared screen. He was talking about the company's biggest win of the year. A process redesigned that had saved the company nearly $4 million annually and was being rolled out across 3 regional offices. He named the person responsible. He thanked them for their leadership, their innovation, and their dedication. He said it was the kind of work that defined careers. He named my boss. I sat in my home office staring at the screen with my coffee getting cold in front of me. Because the work he was describing, every part of it, was mine. The analysis, the modeling, the implementation plan, the rollout strategy, 2 years of my life. My boss had not written a single line of any of it. I waited for him to mention me. He didn't. He didn't mention anyone else on the team. The credit went to one person, and that person was sitting on the call with his camera on, nodding humbly, accepting the recognition like he'd earned it. After the meeting ended, I stayed at my desk for a long time. I'd been a senior analyst at the company for 5 years. I'd worked under this boss, Mark, for 3 of them. I'd assumed, the way you assume things about people you trust, that when the time came to recognize the work, the recognition would land where it belonged. I'd assumed wrong, and I realized, sitting there, that this hadn't been a one-time thing. This had been happening for 2 years, and I'd missed every sign. I started going back through my emails that night. Not to confront him, I wasn't there yet, but because I needed to know how bad it was. I needed to see the pattern. It was bad. Every major piece of work I'd produced in the previous 2 years had been forwarded by Mark to leadership without my name on it. Sometimes he'd attached my deliverable directly. Sometimes he'd lightly reformatted it and put it under a new file name. Sometimes he'd written an executive summary in his own voice and attached my analysis underneath, framed as supporting material for his thinking. I found a presentation I'd built from scratch. 43 slides, every chart, every recommendation. That had been delivered to the executive committee with Mark listed as the sole author. I found a strategic memo I'd written that had been sent to the board with my name removed, and his added. I found something even worse. An email chain between Mark and the chief operating officer, 6 months old, in which the COO had asked specifically who had done the analysis. Mark had responded that it was a team effort, but that he had led the thinking and execution personally. My name appeared nowhere in the response. I sat at my kitchen table at midnight printing out emails. By the time I went to bed, I had a stack 2 inches thick. The next morning, I went to work and acted normal. I sat in my morning meeting with Mark. I nodded along when he gave me my next assignment. I didn't say anything, because I'd realized something the night before. If I confronted him, he'd deny it, and I'd have one conversation against 2 years of his framing. He had relationships with leadership I didn't have. He had been telling them his version of who I was for 2 years. If I went in with accusations, I would lose. I needed something he couldn't explain away, and I needed to build it without him knowing. The opportunity came 3 weeks later. Leadership announced a follow-up initiative, a phase 2 of the same process redesign applied to 2 additional business units. Mark told me in our one-on-one that I'd be doing the analysis again on the same timeline as before. He told me he was counting on me. I told him I was glad to be involved. I started the work, but this time I did 2 things differently. The first was that I CC'd a senior person from another department on every substantive email about the project, not Mark's manager. That would have been too obvious. Someone parallel, someone respected, someone who would remember receiving the updates and would have them in her own inbox, if anyone ever asked. I framed it as keeping her looped in because the work touched her team. She thanked me for the visibility and asked good questions. Every email I sent her was time-stamped and contained the actual analysis. The second was that I built a project document, a working file, and shared it on the company drive with edit access for myself, view access for Mark, and edit access for 2 junior analysts who were going to help me with data collection. The version history on that document captured every change, every addition, every contribution, with the name of the person who'd made it attached. I worked in that document exclusively. Every piece of analysis I did went in there first. Mark didn't notice. Or, if he did, he didn't think anything of it. He'd been getting away with it for 2 years. He had no reason to think anything was different. I worked on the analysis for 4 months. I produced a deliverable that was honestly better than the first one. Cleaner, sharper, more actionable. When it was ready, I sent it to Mark the way I always did. He thanked me and told me he'd take it from there. A week later, the executive presentation went out. Mark presented it. He listed himself as the project lead. He thanked the team in general terms but didn't name anyone. The executive committee approved the next phase of rollout based on his presentation. I waited 2 more days. Then I requested a meeting with the COO. I went into the meeting with a single folder. Inside the folder were 3 things. The first was the version history of the working document, printed out, showing every contribution from every person on the project, including Mark's, which consisted of 2 minor formatting changes across 4 months. The second was the email chain with the senior person from the other department. 63 emails over 4 months, every one of them containing analysis or recommendations, every one of them sent by me, every one of them predating Mark's executive presentation by days or weeks. The third was a side-by-side comparison of Mark's presentation slides and the working document. Every chart was identical. Every recommendation was identical. The only thing that had changed was the name on the title page. I told the COO I wasn't there to make accusations. I told him I was there because I'd realized over the previous several months that there was a discrepancy between the work I was doing and the way it was being represented to leadership, and I wanted him to be aware of it. I told him I'd documented it in case anyone ever wanted to look. He spent 20 minutes going through the folder in silence. When he was done, he asked me one question: whether this had happened with the first project too. I told him I believed it had. He asked if I had documentation. I told him I did. He thanked me for coming in. He told me he'd handle it from there. He told me not to discuss the meeting with anyone, including Mark. 2 weeks later, Mark was gone. The official announcement said he was leaving to pursue other opportunities. There was no farewell email and no party. His office was cleared out over a weekend. I was offered his role on an interim basis and confirmed in it 3 months later. The COO told me, in the conversation where he offered me the promotion, that the company had reviewed 2 years of project records and that several other people's work had been similarly misrepresented. He didn't tell me who. He told me it had been handled. I run that team now. The first thing I did when I took over was institute a rule that every deliverable going to leadership included the names of everyone who contributed to it, not as a footnote, on the cover. If this story hit you, subscribe. Every case on this channel starts with trust and ends with the truth.